For thousands of years, the sands of Egypt have guarded secrets so profound that they challenge everything we think we know about ancient history, human civilization, and the sacred texts that shaped the modern world. When we imagine the epic narrative of the Israelites in Egypt, our minds naturally drift to the familiar cinematic imagery. We picture grand pharaohs sitting on golden thrones, towering statues casting long shadows over the Nile, and a desperate enslaved population building monuments under the merciless heat of the desert sun. But beneath this well-known surface lies a much darker, deeper, and hidden layer of history, one that intertwines ancient architecture, lost spiritual technologies, and a clandestine struggle for the very soul of the ancient world. To truly understand this monumental saga, we have to look far beyond the standard historical timelines taught in schools. Long before the dramatic confrontations between Moses and the royal court, the arrival of the Israelites in the fertile lands of Goshen was marked by a quiet migration driven by famine. Under the protection of Joseph, who rose from a forgotten prisoner to become the Grand Vizier of Egypt, the early Hebrews found safety and prosperity. For generations, they lived alongside the native Egyptians, adopting certain aspects of their culture, while fiercely preserving their own monotheistic identity and heritage. But empires rise and fall, and dynasties shift. As generations passed, the political winds in Memphis and Thebes changed drastically. A new king arose who did not know Joseph, a pharaoh driven by fear, paranoia, and political expediency, who looked upon the rapidly growing Hebrew population not as guests, but as a severe existential threat to the stability of his empire. This is where the grand narrative transforms from a simple story of migration into an intense industrial and spiritual mobilization. The pharaohs of the New Kingdom, particularly during the 19th dynasty, were obsessed with legacy, monumental construction, and divine authority. The Israelites were forced into grueling physical labor, quarrying massive blocks of limestone and granite, hauling multi-ton monoliths, and building entire storage cities like Pithom and Ramesses. Mainstream historians view these monumental structures purely as symbols of royal ego and architectural triumph. However, ancient Hebrew traditions and esoteric texts suggest a completely different reality. They hint that the forced labor was not just about building storehouses or temples for human kings. It was systematically directed toward sealing, reinforcing, and constructing underground complexes designed to safeguard ancient sacred relics and knowledge brought down by the patriarchs. Deep beneath the Giza Plateau, and hidden within the limestone labyrinths near the ancient delta, massive subterranean anomalies have baffled modern geologists and radar specialists for decades. These are not mere drainage systems or simple tombs. They are vast, multi-layered underground voids, heavily restricted by authorities, echoing a time when architecture served a higher mystical purpose. The early patriarchs like Abraham and Joseph carried with them traditions and spiritual artifacts of immense potency, items that predated the formalized polytheism of the Egyptian state. The priesthood of Egypt, deeply entrenched in complex magical rituals and the worship of a pantheon of animal-headed deities, viewed these foreign elements with a mixture of terror and fierce competitive obsession. When Moses finally stepped into the grand hall of the pharaoh, demanding the liberation of his people with the famous phrase, "Let my people go," he was not merely acting as a social reformer or a rebellious refugee. He was initiating the final, inevitable clash in a centuries-long spiritual war. The famous 10 plagues of Egypt were not random acts of natural devastation or atmospheric anomalies. If you examine them closely through the lens of ancient Egyptian theology, every single plague was a surgical, calculated strike against a specific deity worshipped by the Egyptians. Consider the very first plague, where the sacred waters of the Nile turned completely to blood. To the Egyptians, the Nile was not just a river, it was the lifeblood of their civilization, believed to be the sweat and essence of the god Hapi and the eternal domain of Osiris. By turning the river into blood, the cosmic order was violently dismantled, paralyzing the economic and religious heartbeat of the empire. Then came the plague of frogs, directly confronting Hecate, the frog-headed goddess of fertility and rebirth, turning what was once a symbol of life into an overwhelming, foul plague of death. Each successive judgment, from the swarms of flies targeting Khepri and the darkness that choked out Ra, the supreme sun god, served a singular purpose. It systematically humiliated the pantheon of Egypt, proving the absolute impotence of the pharaoh's divine protection. Yet, even as the darkness descended upon the palaces of Egypt and grief touched every Egyptian household from the highest noble to the lowliest servant, a monumental operation was underway in the shadows. In the dead of night, amidst the chaos of the final departure, the multitudes did not leave empty-handed. They carried out treasures, ancient texts, and early spiritual relics of immeasurable value, items that would eventually form the core of the sacred covenants and find their ultimate resting place inside the Ark of the Covenant. But what about the things left behind? What secrets remained, buried deep within the bedrock of the desert, sealed away behind stone doors that no human hand was ever meant to open again?